Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 100 of Teaching Tales, the podcast totally devoted to sharing stories from the world of education. I am your host, Brent Coley, an elementary principal in beautiful Southern California. And joining me today for, once again, a very special episode. I didn't think, when I started this podcast 3, 4, 5 years ago, I wasn't sure if we were going to get to a dozen episodes, much less 50, but here we are at 100. So to celebrate the historic event, I have he's a returning guest, my father. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
All right. I've got Don, the esteemed Don Coley, my father here. He was at episode, was it 6?
Number 6.
Number 6, so it's been 94 episodes, but I thought, when I was getting close to 100, I thought, Dad, I wasn't sure what we were going to do for episode 100, but then I had the idea, but we'll get there in just a second. For anyone who hasn't listened to episode 6, because that was a long time ago, give us a brief rundown, because we'll get into more like the episode itself, but introduce yourself.
Well, you've introduced me. I'm Don Coley, and I think the reason that you really picked me is because I'm closest in age to 100 than probably anyone else that you have. As you know, I retired at the end of last year and am kind of positioning myself for the next season. I'm going to be 76 in a couple of months, and I'm really looking forward to where we go from here.
Yes. Well, close to 100. That's funny. Yeah. Well, I won't go into if you're the oldest guest or not. That's relevant, but certainly potentially one of the wisest guests that I've had on, if not the wisest, with some experience that I want you to share today. So the title of this episode, and this is the idea I had, was, like you said, you have recently retired and you've had a long career in leadership positions. And I thought, gosh, now that you've retired, I would love for you to share, I think I said, I want you to share leadership lessons for any level. And you came back and said, no, I got a better title than that. It was 8 things.
8 things I wish I knew when I started.
8 things I wish I knew when I started, which is that's a little better than what I had in mind. And I don't know what you're going to say. You were going to tell me a few days ago. I said, no. Don't tell me what you're going to say.
Well, I called you the next day, I think, and I think I found 8 more things that I wish I knew when I started, because when you get to this point, there's a lot of things you wish you knew when you'd started, and that's one of the things that you're an educator. In my own way, I'm kind of an educator. If you're going to be a lifelong learner and educator, you've got to find an avenue to teach, to share. So that's what we're all about. And
that's why I'm doing the podcast, to hopefully share nuggets of whether it's wisdom or experience. So I'm excited. So for anyone listening, regardless of what position you're in, whether you are a classroom teacher, an instructional aide, a playground supervisor, a principal, an assistant principal, or not even in education, everybody is a leader of someone. Maybe you're just a parent, not just a parent. Maybe you are a parent. You are leading your family, your kids. So 8 things you wish you knew. Let's jump in. What is, and again, I don't know what you're going to say. So let's go. What's number 1?
Number one, don't be the smartest person in the room.
So
because the peril in being the smartest person in the room is that there's people in the group, in the room with you, who know you aren't. Okay? Yeah, probably everybody knows you're not.
Yes.
And even if you are the smartest person in the room, you know what I'm saying? Don't be the smartest person in the room, because there's an air that comes with that smartest person in the room that is going to cut you off from being able to gather all the information that you need to have to be a good leader. So even if you're the smartest person in the room, don't be the smartest person in the room, because I think a quality, and sometimes this isn't seen this way, but a respected, high-quality leader has a spirit of humility about them. When you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably also the most arrogant person in the room. And if I was to be able to go back and do something, I would shed the cloak of arrogance much earlier than I did, and pick up the mantle of humility and be part of the people in the room working towards a goal.
I love that. I think I've heard it said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Because, like you said, first of all, they probably know you're not the smartest in the room. And then if you are the smartest person in the room, as you were saying that, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're not going to grow yourself. You need to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you.
And I think that takes us to another point, and that is, and this is difficult for some. I've seen it, and maybe you've heard the expression A's hire A's and B's hire C's. Okay, if you are an A quality person, you want to surround yourself with A quality people. But
yes.
if you're a little bit gun shy, a little bit whatever, and if you're a B, you're not going to hire somebody equal to or above you.
Because they're a threat.
Yeah, they're a threat. You're going to hire a C. All right? A's hire A's and B's hire C's, or worse, because they want to be the smartest person in the room. So if you're in that room and you're surrounded by people that you want them to feel like they've got something to contribute to the conversation, and that arrogance, that stifling, it will shut you away from the kinds of accomplishments that you can reach if you're not worried about who's going to get the credit.
Oh, amen. Yeah, because absolutely, you're going to do a better job. I'm consistently amazed by, people around me make me look good in my job. It's kind of like, wow, your school's it. It's not because, it's oftentimes despite me. It's because I've surrounded myself with people who, more often than not, are better than me.
So one of the things that I would learn or I would pass on is risk hiring people who are more gifted than you are in certain ways. Okay, they're probably not going to be gifted in every way than you are, because then you'd probably be interviewing with them.
Yeah.
All right. But if you can take people who are gifted in different ways.
In different ways, yeah.
Because what you want to do is you want to complement yourself and the other members of your team in such a way that they can come together. And this is I'm going to use 3 words today that I think need to be discussed, and I should probably finish that thought. You want to be a whole team, okay? And that whole team brings us to the first word, the first root that comes from that, and that's if you've got elementary school teachers that are teaching numbers, they're going to be talking about integers, right? And what is an integer? It's a whole number. You get to fractions later on. You get to breaking up that whole later on. But if you're going to be complete as a leader, you want to surround yourself with A's as much as you possibly can, and then that have gifts that they bring to the table, that combined, you have the ability to go places you will never get by yourself.
Yeah. Well, if you think of leaders around us, from government leaders, they surround themselves. The presidents throughout history have cabinets, and that those people have specialized skills, specialized experiences that they lean on in cases where, okay, I'm not the expert here. Enlighten me, lead me how I should lead, type thing. So,
yeah. That takes me off the track here. No, that's okay. That's okay, because because you talk about the president and the cabinet, and if I could go to a leader with a spirit of humility, learn the right pronoun. We.
There
Okay,
we go.
because it's first person plural, not first person singular.
Amen.
Everybody knows they have a cabinet. Everybody knows the leader. If he's using I, he hasn't quite caught on yet.
Yeah.
You know, he's someday, hopefully, he'll think, I should have listened to Don Coley and Brent Coley's podcast back there and learned about we.
Yeah.
The power of we cannot be overstated.
Amen. Amen. So a little bonus nugget for number one.
there you
Okay.
go.
So how about number two? What is the second thing that you wish you had learned when you started? Wish you'd known that.
Wish I'd known when I started, or at least, you know, and some of these I knew, but then you can mine the depths of things.
Yes.
So the second one would be the word integrity. If you do not have integrity as a leader, you will lose trust. And if you lose trust, nobody's following you. Nobody's following you. And Brent, you know, in the early 90s, we moved to Minnesota, and you were there for a very short period of time before you fled back to Southern California. But sometime, maybe 12, 13 years after the whole family moved back to California, there was a bridge collapse over the Mississippi River on Interstate 35W. It was in 2007, and I think 13 people died. The bridge collapsed because it lost its structural integrity. All right, and I know that there are people who, following that, weren't maybe as confident in going out over bridges. There's a trust factor that's there, and for a leader, it is just, in fact, this is the primary thing. The don't be the smartest person in the room. Okay, that's kind of, we put that there.
Sure.
But a leader must have integrity, must be a person of their word, must model what it is that they're saying, must not give a book to their cabinet and say, read the book, and the people in the cabinet read the book, and the leader is talking about the glowing terms about this book, but not following it. Mm-hmm. Okay? When the bridge collapsed, the bridge failed to do what it purported to do. It was intended to take me from here to there. It represented itself in the mind of the people who were going to be carried across the river on it.
Yeah.
It's going to get them safely there. The leader needs to have the trust of his people that what he says is what he's going to do. He's going to be a person of integrity, because you have to have trust if you're going to bring that cabinet together and they're going to work together, which takes you into the third word, if you will, and that's integrated. They all come from the same root. And when you're integrated, you're taking people in. You know as well as I do that I grew up playing baseball. I coached at Westmont College in a couple of years. The job of a manager of a baseball team or football is to put the players in the right position. And when a leader hires the right people, he needs to make sure that he or she, puts them in the right positions. Because it's important that they be in the right position to number one, for the benefit of the whole team. Mm-hmm. But number two, if they're playing in the wrong position, you're not the only one that knows that. They know it.
Yeah.
You see somebody who's part of your team and they're struggling, and it's not because of lack of effort, it's not because of lack of desire, it's just they're probably playing out of position.
Yeah.
All right. So find a place to put them. If you at all can, put them in their sweet spot where they can excel. See if you can find a place. In some cases, you might want to create a position to put that person where they can be a contributing factor.
Playing out a position. I yes, from a sports perspective, I can relate to that. And then also, yeah, and I liked how you said the manager, the coach, the leader is not the only one who knows it. The person themselves knows it, which leads to decreased self-esteem. You think your value is lower. It's like I'm not doing a good job, and it may just be because I'm not in the right place to do.
And think about the fact that if you wake up in the morning and you're going to a job that you know that it's not your sweet spot, it's not where you want to be, you don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Because you know you're not performing. A leader is not doing a favor to let's say an underperforming individual. Not doing them a favor if he or she doesn't sit down and talk with them and try to work through a resolution of those issues, making sure that, it may be that they're not performing well because the leader hasn't given them all the resources. Mm-hmm. It may be that they're not performing because the leader hasn't set out the expectation. It may be that the leader hasn't given the encouragement and the feedback. There's all sorts of factors that are there. And one of the things that I kind of put down, and this was something that I've used now for the last 15 years of my career in a fairly good-sized nonprofit, is the truth is always your friend. Mm-hmm. The truth is always your friend. Leaders have to grab on to that. They have to understand the truth is always their friend, even if they don't like it when they see it. You have to. There's so many dimensions and little rabbit trails we could go out on that one, but I think you've got to be at school tomorrow, so we won't go there. But if the truth is your friend, that's going to require you to be courageous, uh-huh, and make an appointment and sit down and have a hard conversation, not just for the benefit of the team, but for the benefit of the individual.
Yep. And while it may be uncomfortable in the moment, mm-hmm, and make no mistake, they're called uncomfortable conversations for a reason, because they're uncomfortable, but moving forward, everybody will benefit from that.
And that kind of goes, a leader who sits down in one of those conversations they're going to talk about the past, but the focus must always be on the future. Mm-hmm. Whatever I say that happened needs to be said in such a way that it motivates better performance in the future. Mm-hmm. And if I could jump to something else here, I've a couple of examples that we've talked about in the past. I've learned to delight and celebrate with team members when they succeed. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I was, one of the 8 things that I wish I knew was the importance of that. It is so important that, because I wrote down at first, celebrate the wins with your team members. Mm-hmm. And then I said, I've got to preface that with something. Want to celebrate the wins of the team members. If you want to celebrate the wins of your team members, you're going to be more proactive in putting them in the position where they're going to win.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many people like to go to parties? Not everybody's a party goer.
Not everybody, but yeah, most people, okay. Yes.
A lot of people like to go to parties. Can we say this with some degree of confidence, that there's more people who want to go to parties than want to plan the party?
I think with very much certainty.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Because to have a good party, there has to be some planning to put all the elements of that together. And I think a leader who wants to celebrate the wins of his team and his individual team members has to want to be proactive in putting in place all of the ingredients to have that celebration. And that's a great celebration.
Yeah.
It is really a great celebration.
Awesome. So that's 2.
That's 2. Well, I actually got more.
Oh, did you get
more,
through? Okay.
more than 2? You know.
All right. So next, number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3. Here we go.
Number 3. Listen more.
Listen more. Tell me more. I'm listening. But I love this one. I could not agree more. Listen more.
Listen more, because, and this goes back to being the smartest person in the room. If you don't not just listen more, but listen first, and you can listen first as and take that as part of your market research to validate some of the things that you might be coming. A leader it should be a visionary at some point in time. They're not always in a visionary position, but you don't get to 100 podcasts, in education if you haven't had a vision to reach people outside of your geography, outside of your school, your campus, and so you have this vision to do something. Well, most leaders have visions. They're heads of organizations or departments. They're working with other people. It's wise for that person to listen, to get feedback, to hear what other people have to say on that particular subject. And oftentimes, the leader needs to give the opportunity for the team members to express themselves before he expresses himself. And this is maybe the thing that I've learned intellectually. Experientially, I'm 2 or 3 steps behind.
Sure.
And I say it this way: in a conversation with my team, if I cut the channel, everybody's going to flow behind me. So I've got to be very cautious about what I say in setting up a conversation, because
they're coming behind.
They're coming behind me,
Yeah.
And if they come behind me, I might not be hearing the truth. I might be going, I might be flowing out of the bank in the wrong direction. But most people are going to follow the leader. You play that in elementary school, you do whatever, they follow the leader. If the leader cuts the channel in that direction, people are going to flow behind them. I have been
in good ways and bad ways.
And bad ways. I have been in staff meetings where leaders will make a statement or ask for a particular result. And let's say there's 10 people in the room, and the leader has asked the same question for everyone. The first person who answers that question is going to set the bar, and nobody's going to run underneath the bar, because they know that the bar has been set here. The expectation, it can't be less than that. And in the same dynamic as at work, if the leader sets a bar someplace that's unrealistic, they might shut themselves off from hearing a truth that is their friend that they might not like to hear. And if they give the freedom for their team to speak first, and then not shut them down, but to consider that and then work with the team to actually have an honest dialogue and see whether or not the team can arrive at a mutually agreeable solution.
And that is, gosh, I like that one. Not easy. Not always easy.
No.
But because you have to be very vulnerable, it's a very scary thing to sometimes do that. But as you said, if the team is arriving at the destination, the worst thing is to like, hey, let's go. And then you turn around and no one's behind you. Or they're dragging their feet, grumbling to follow you.
Well, one of the let's talk about ownership. Okay? Talk about ownership. If I come in and cut the channel, everybody follows behind me. What kind of ownership do I have on the part of the staff?
Yeah.
What kind of buy-in do I have? How are they emotionally invested? What contributions have they made? Zip.
Yeah.
None. But if we have that difficult conversation and we go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and we take something from over here and something else from over there, when we leave that meeting and we've got a consensus, it's ours.
It was our idea. It wasn't his idea or her idea. It was our idea.
Yeah. And there's also an acknowledgement.
You may have better ideas than I do. I mean, I freely say, guys, help me out here.
Brent, you're in the process of writing another book.
I
am. So you know that every writer needs a good editor.
Correct.
All right? And there's a role of that editor. If I'm a writer, and I am, okay, but I have to have a recognition that there's people who are better than I am at the editing process, tightening up a word, making sure that the punctuation is correct. This sentence here is unclear. If I think I am the be-all and end-all there, and that's what I present to the team, I'm going to publish an inferior product, and people out there are going to know it. So I would rather sandpaper and get it smoothed down inside the room.
Going back to the smartest person in the room, and from a writing perspective, if you think you're the smartest person in the room and you know it all, you're going to publish an inferior product and the people who read it will recognize some of the mistakes that we were too arrogant to acknowledge that maybe somebody could have caught that. So very.
So in my retirement that has just come up, I've been able to do some. I've been empowered by my boss to do some things, to allow my creativity to be expressed. And he acknowledges that, but I also acknowledge that he acknowledges it. I acknowledge I've been able to bring a lot to the table because he's allowed me to.
You.
And that's critical when it comes to buy-in and taking a project and working it together to get to a common goal.
And as you said that, it made me think of if you're listening to this and you're in the position that, again, everyone is a leader of someone, but if the leader of you, whoever is your superior, your supervisor, and they are doing kind of what you, Dad, are talking about and allowing you to bring ideas to the table, how important is that to acknowledge that? Because I think some of you right now may be listening thinking like, yeah, my boss doesn't let me do that. My boss cuts the channel by himself or herself and doesn't ask for our input. So when you have that kind of leader acknowledging that and potentially expressing thankfulness, hey, thanks for letting me bring that idea. I really appreciate you letting me, because that's going to encourage that leader to let you do it more.
Yeah, and go back to the leader side. When something comes up, make sure you go back to the leadership pronoun. We got there, because I've also been in situations where it was expressed by the leader as an I, which wasn't true. That's a violation of integrity, among other things, okay? And your team
he took credit for...
They take credit for something that, and you know, it's like...
Always better to give credit, more credit to those around you than the other way.
And do it externally. Don't do it just in the conference room. Do it where it can share. Don't be so effusive in your affirmation that it starts to sound like, you know, this is not good. But don't be afraid to promote in the verbal sense, promote the accomplishments of your people to their peers and your peers. That will build a loyalty, because one of the things that a leader wants to do, we've been talking about a team, we've been talking about hiring A's. There's a risk there that those A's are going to move into another position.
You're going to lose those people eventually, but that's...
That you will lose some. Some will stick around because of the relationship and the value that they have from being affirmed in that situation.
Yeah.
I have someone who left us and went to a much higher paying position, and then a couple of years later I got word from another staff member that this person wanted to come back, and I didn't think it would be possible because the financial hit was too great. That person is back. That person is contributing. Why? Because there's a recognition that they are valued, and they were in another position where they weren't valued. Value your people. That's what I meant when... part of what I meant when you want to celebrate the success of your people. You want to acknowledge their contributions. You want to distribute success and you want to be able to distribute and acknowledge that the people on your team that have been there and contributed, they know that you know.
Yeah.
And that they know that you know their value so much, and you're confident enough about yourself to tell others.
Yeah.
And yes, going back 2 minutes to when you said you're going to lose people. You will lose people.
To the benefit of others in a different organization or a different team or a different school if you're in education.
But you will have a reputation of a mentor that will attract other people who are also A's, but they just don't have the experience level yet.
Yeah.
And where would they like to gather that? They'd like to gather it in a place where they aren't taken for granted, they are valued, they are able to contribute.
Yeah. Well, and you said in the example of the person who left the organization for a higher paying job but came back later because he felt valued, and it just feeling valued can contain more value than monetary value. And that's, I mean, how many people will take a lower paying job but feel valued, feel appreciated? I mean, we wouldn't do getting paid is nice. We wouldn't do everything for free, but money's not everything.
Well, and I recall this statistic. I don't know if it's valid today, but it was 50 years ago when I heard that the number one reason that people cite for leaving a job is money. But but if you ask somebody who's content in their job where money ranks, it's fourth. Mm-hmm. There's a whole lot more contributing factors, and that's going to come from leadership.
That's going
to come from leadership. We don't have 6 more, by the way, here.
No, we're going to do one more, and then we are going to break, and we'll have a part 2. So give us number 4, and then we'll break, and we'll come back in the next episode, number 101. How about that? for the next 4. So what's number 4? Things you wish you knew when you started.
That if you don't share expectations, conflict is inevitable. You must share, your team must share expectations. They must share the same expectation. You need, if you're in a private enterprise in a non-education environment, it's called the elevator speech. What is it that you're doing? What is expected of me? It comes down to job descriptions. This is what we expect. If we're working on a project, if you've got 7 people working on a project and they don't share the same expectation, they're going to come to different conclusions, and you're going to have a mess on your hands because there's going to be conflict coming on. It's somewhere along the line in that process.
And from a classroom perspective, I know that when I was in the classroom, on the and pretty much every single teacher does this, on the first day of school, what do? You go through your expectations, your classroom rules, but typically now we don't refer to them as rules, they're expectations. And so often I will see teachers, they will come up together and go over things, and boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, these are the expectations. What do you think of those? And I've even been in classrooms where I've had they come up with their own. I used to have, Mr. Coley, I think we should have, some of them said, Mr. Coley, I think we should say please and thank you. That was one that became one of our expectations. Yes, it was one of mine, but that was what students came up with. That was their expectation. And I think, again, whether you're education, business, nonprofit, profit, it doesn't matter. I could not agree more. But from an educator's perspective, every teacher right now is nodding your head because you do it on the first day of school.
Well, and please and thank you are just labels on top of a bigger package.
Yes.
Okay? What they're really talking about is kind behavior.
Kind behavior. Because that's what they expect.
That's what they want.
That's what they want. Students expect people to be nice. We've got our slogan, be nice. It's Be Nice Thursdays. We've got shirts of Be Nice. It's what we expect. It's what kids expect. But if I don't, as the teacher, as the leader of that classroom, or as now the principal of the school, if I don't clearly communicate, this isn't just a rule. I've shied away. I don't like the term rule as much as it's what we expect. Not what I expect, it's what we expect.
Well, and there's an authoritarian approach to the rule or connotation to the rule.
Sure.
Where if we have expectations that we share, there's some agreement.
Rules usually because I said so. An expectation is, are we all in agreement that this is what we all want? Yeah. Okay. So that means that we're all going to do our best or do our part to meet these expectations.
Yeah, and this goes back to integrity and somebody who would hand out a book. Our leadership team is going to go through this book, and then the leader falls very shy of that, and that doesn't mean that the leader doesn't have the opportunity to make the final decision. And it doesn't give license to somebody on the team to withhold their approval and sabotage the project. All right. But you go through that process, you're going to be better off, because one of the things that happens in the process is that there's going to be a much greater level of communication, a sharing ideas that are going back and forth that will help to define what the project is, what the expectation is. Without that communication, without that sharing, you may leave the room believing one thing is true, and I'm going to, because it's something else, because you have applied a different interpretation to a word or to a sentence or to a look than I have, and that's where you have that unshared expectation, and that will ultimately result in butting of heads.
Or poorly communicated expectations. I'm thinking too of times where I gave an assignment and students are turning something in and it's not what, in my mind, this is not what I said I wanted. Now, if one student does it, but when you start seeing multiple students doing it in different ways, now that comes back to me that, okay, and even now as a leader, I put something out and I'm not getting the response I want. I have to look back and say, did I clearly communicate my expectations? Apparently not. I thought I did, but the evidence would suggest otherwise. Because if I did, I would be probably getting a better response. So,
true.
Well, all right. So we're halfway through, but we're already over, I think, a half hour. So we're going to pause here. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in for this. There's more where this came from. So, again, if you have not already done so, there's 99 episodes before this one, so you can feel free to go back and...
I recommend starting with episode 6.
My dad says number 6 was where you should start, because he's got a special connection with that guest as well. But again, subscribe to the podcast or in any of your favorite podcatchers, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you can listen directly on the website at brentcoley.com. And we're going to sign off now, but tune in for episode 101. We're going to continue this conversation with the last 4 things that my dad wished he knew when he started. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you in episode 101.